There's a strange and unsettling truth about human behavior that most people don't realize until they've lived through it. Sometimes the person who hurts you the most becomes the person you feel the strongest connection to. It doesn't make sense on the surface. Why would the brain cling to someone who brings stress, confusion, and emotional pain? The answer lies deep in the psychological wiring built long before adulthood, long before romantic love, and long before we had the language to understand our own emotions. Trauma bonding begins quietly, almost invisibly, when affection and pain become intertwined in a way that the brain starts mistaking intensity for intimacy. At first, this person may appear loving, attentive, and safe. They give you a sense of being seen, chosen, and wanted in a way you may not have felt in years. But then, slowly and subtly, the pattern shifts. Their warmth becomes inconsistent, their affection unpredictable, and their attention conditional. And because the human brain is built to seek connection above all else, the very inconsistency that should push you away ends up drawing you even closer. We chase the highs to escape the lows. We begin to believe that if we can just fix the connection, if we can just behave better, love harder, or try more, the relationship will return to the moment when it felt perfect. This cycle of emotional reward and emotional deprivation doesn't just affect the heart, it rewires the brain. The mind becomes laser-focused on the moments of affection, ignoring the moments of pain, because the highs feel so powerful that the lows become something the brain is willing to endure just to feel chosen again. This is why highly intelligent, educated, emotionally aware people can fall into trauma bonds. It has nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with the way early emotional experiences shape our understanding of love. If you grew up in an environment where comfort and stress existed side by side, where love came mixed with fear, neglect, or inconsistency, your brain learned early on that emotional chaos is normal. It learned that affection must be earned, that attention must be chased, that peace is a brief moment before the next storm. So when a partner repeats those early emotional patterns, the bond feels familiar, even if it is unhealthy. That familiarity can feel like love, even when it is really survival. Trauma bonding thrives at this intersection where emotional pain, psychological confusion, and desperate hope combine into one powerful attachment. It doesn't happen because someone is weak. It happens because the human brain is wired to seek connection, even when the connection is hurting us. And unless we understand the hidden psychology behind this pattern, people remain trapped in relationships that damage them, yet feel impossible to walk away from. To understand why trauma bonds feel so unbreakable, we have to look at what's happening inside the brain. Because long before the heart becomes attached, the nervous system becomes hooked. When someone gives you affection unpredictably, the brain releases dopamine in sharp, intense spikes. These dopamine bursts don't come from consistent love, but from unpredictable love. The sudden text after hours of silence, the random compliment after days of cold behavior, the unexpected apology right when you're about to walk away. This pattern mirrors the same chemical loop seen in gambling addiction. The uncertainty, not the reward itself, becomes the hook. But dopamine is only the beginning. Every moment of closeness with this person releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone that creates a sense of safety and attachment. Even when the relationship is chaotic, the body clings to those brief moments of warmth, confusing them for true security. And when conflict erupts, when there's yelling, stonewalling, or emotional withdrawal, your body becomes flooded with cortisol, the stress hormone that keeps you on edge. Over time, the brain begins to associate stress not as a danger, but as part of the emotional connection. You don't just miss the person, you miss the biochemical roller coaster they create. This is why leaving a toxic bond feels like withdrawal. The brain isn't craving the person as much as it's craving the chemical pattern, the rush, the relief, the intensity. What should feel unhealthy begins to feel addictive. and even when logic tells you the relationship is destroying you. The nervous system whispers something different. Go back. This is how trauma bonds turn toxic love into a chemical trap. One that feels impossible to escape until you understand what your brain is actually fighting against. Trauma bonds don't form by accident. They are created through a calculated psychological cycle that keeps you emotionally dependent while slowly reshaping the way you think, feel, and react. It usually begins with love bombing, a phase that feels almost unreal. This person showers you with attention, admiration, affection, and promises of a future that seems too good to be true. You feel chosen, valued, and understood in ways that unlock a deep emotional longing. But love bombing isn't love. It's a setup. Once you are emotionally invested, the cycle shifts into devaluation, the stage where warmth turns cold, affection becomes inconsistent, and criticism slowly replaces praise. The same person who once made you feel cherished now makes you feel confused, insecure, and desperate to regain the connection you believed was genuine. This confusion becomes the central trap of a trauma bond because the brain attempts to reconcile two conflicting realities: the person who loved you intensely and the person who hurts you deeply. To cope with this contradiction, many people begin to blame themselves rather than question the relationship. Then comes gaslighting, one of the strongest tools an abuser uses. They deny what they said, twist events, minimize your feelings, or make you question your reality entirely. Over time, you begin to believe their version of events more than your own. You stop trusting your intuition. You start thinking you are the problem. And each time you try to leave or pull away, the abuser switches into the fear relief cycle. They apologize, show vulnerability, make promises, and briefly become the person they were in the beginning. This sudden return of affection feels like relief from the emotional storm, and that relief becomes addictive. You start believing that if you just love them better, if you stay patient, if you heal them or help them change, the old version of them will return permanently. But that person never existed. They were a mask used to create attachment. What keeps you trapped is the hope that the mask will come back. In reality, this cycle is designed to keep you emotionally weak, psychologically dependent, and easier to control. Trauma bonds thrive on this manipulation pattern because it keeps you suspended between fear and hope. And that emotional limbo becomes the perfect environment for control. One of the most heartbreaking truths about trauma bonds is that people don't stay because they are weak. They stay because something deep inside them was shaped long before the relationship even began. Childhood wounds play an enormous role in how we form emotional attachments, especially if we grew up in environments where love was inconsistent, unpredictable, or conditional. When affection was mixed with fear or neglect, the nervous system learned early on that relationships are unstable, that love must be chaste, and that emotional closeness always comes with tension. So in adulthood, when a partner repeats these familiar patterns, the bond feels strangely natural, even if it is deeply unhealthy. Attachment styles also play a powerful role. People with anxious attachment often fear abandonment so intensely that they tolerate mistreatment just to avoid feeling alone. Those with avoidant attachment may gravitate toward emotionally distant partners because it mirrors the emotional void they grew up with. And those with fearful attachment carry both trauma and longing, creating a push-pull cycle that makes breaking free feel almost impossible. But the deepest reason people stay is identity loss. Over time, toxic partners undermine your confidence, weaken your boundaries, and make you question your worth until you no longer recognize yourself. The relationship becomes the center of your emotional world, and leaving feels like losing a part of your identity rather than losing a toxic person. You stay because you hope. You stay because you fear starting over. You stay because your brain confuses familiarity with safety. You stay because somewhere inside, the child who once learned to accept scraps of affection still believes that this is what love feels like. And until you understand these psychological roots, the bond continues to feel unbreakable, even when it's destroying you. Breaking a trauma bond is not easy, but it is possible. And it begins with understanding that what you are experiencing is not a failure of character, but a survival mechanism of the brain. The first step toward freedom is awareness. Recognizing the patterns of manipulation, inconsistency, and emotional dependence allows you to separate the reality of the relationship from the illusions your mind has built. The brain must relearn what love, safety, and attachment feel like without pain, and this requires both distance and intentional rebuilding. Cutting contact, or at least creating space from the person who hurts you, is essential. This physical and emotional separation gives your nervous system the chance to recalibrate, to detox from the chemical highs and lows that made the bond feel addictive. During this period, seeking support from friends, family, or a therapist is crucial. Healthy connections provide emotional oxygen, teaching the brain that attachment can feel safe, consistent, and nurturing, rather than chaotic and unpredictable. Rebuilding self-worth is another key step. Trauma bonds thrive when the victim doubts themselves, blames themselves, or feels unworthy of love. By cultivating self-compassion and recognizing your inherent value, you gradually replace the false narratives imposed by the toxic relationship with empowering truths about who you are and what you deserve. Mindfulness and reflection can also help. Observing your emotions without judgment, journaling your experiences, and identifying triggers allows you to notice the patterns without reacting automatically. Over time, the brain begins to dissociate emotional intensity from the toxic partner and form new, healthier neural pathways. You learn to experience love as safe, respectful, and consistent, not as a high-stakes emotional gamble. It is important to remember that healing is rarely linear. There will be moments of doubt, nostalgia, or even craving for the familiar chaos. But with persistence, self-care, and support, those moments gradually diminish. You can reclaim your autonomy, your emotional stability, and your ability to form healthy relationships. Trauma bonds do not define you. They are challenges to overcome, not permanent chains. Understanding the psychological, emotional, and neurological aspects of these bonds equips you with the tools to break free and choose yourself. Remember, healing is not selfish. It is necessary. As you step out of the cycle of pain and into clarity, you open yourself to a life of genuine connection, of peace, and empowerment. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the psychology behind trauma bonds. If this video helped you understand your own experiences or gave you insights into the patterns around you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more content on human behavior, psychology, and emotional well-being. We'll continue exploring the mysteries of the mind, breaking down complex concepts into practical insights, and sharing stories that resonate with real-life experiences. Stay tuned, and we'll catch up in the next video. Remember, choosing yourself is always the first step toward true freedom.